Hey everybody, it's Joe, Igniting History, coming at you with this week's episode on Rome, and more specifically Roman engineering. Make sure to like our page, subscribe, go to our Twitter and our Facebook, check us out. We've got a lot of good content on there daily, along with these videos, so thanks for subscribing and watching us, and make sure to tell your friends about us, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to dive right into Roman engineering. We're going to talk a little bit about Rome itself for a minute. See a little bit of a background. As you see here pictured, this was the Roman Empire in 117 AD at its height. So this is the largest it got, which you can see is a vast area of land. The Roman Empire, or Rome itself, was founded in 753 BCE by a couple of twins, as the legend says, named Romulus and Remus. The Rome was at first a monarchy, and then it turned into a Roman Republic up until the death of Julius Caesar in 44 BC, when his adopted son Augustus turned it into an empire when he became the first Roman emperor, Augustus Caesar. Rome proper, so the Western Roman Empire, would last until 476 AD, until it was sacked and taken over by numerous tribes and other peoples from outside their walls. By that time, however, the capital of the Roman Empire had moved to Constantinople, and part of the Byzantine Empire. And that part of the Roman Empire didn't fall until in mid-1400s AD. So you're talking about a Roman influence for a very, very long time. They accomplished a lot of things. They were very technologically savvy, and they may have been brutal and ruthless, but they knew what they were doing. And their effects are still seen today with many of our modern day livings. So let's get to it. Roman engineering. We're going to talk about the Coliseum, the Roman roads, and the aqueducts during this episode. So let's move on. The Roman Coliseum, also known as the Flavian Amphitheater, was built between 72 and 80 AD under the Emperor Vespasian. And it sits right in the middle of Rome. It's made of stone and concrete. That's right, the Romans did invent concrete. It's not like the stuff we have today, but it's very similar. Very strong, as you can see. This thing's lasted almost 2,000 years. If it weren't for it being destroyed by Vandals, it'd probably still be intact. It took tens of thousands of slaves to build. It is the largest amphitheater in the world. It stands about 12 stories tall. It's 189 meters long and 156 meters wide. And you could easily see why it was so imposing. This is a good shot from obviously from above. You can see where all the seating would be, and the floor of the Coliseum, and then underneath is all the cells and the trapdoors and everything where they would keep the slaves and the gladiators and the animals and everybody who worked the Coliseum. The Coliseum itself sat about 50,000 people. It was free to go to the games, to watch gladiators fight, watch the animal hunts, and the Coliseum could be emptied out in about 15 minutes. So you imagine 50,000 people out, and it's cleared in 15 minutes. That's incredibly impressive, considering if you've gone to some of the football stadiums, they're about as big as that. Some are a lot larger, but it takes a lot longer than 15 minutes to get out. It was like that because it had 80 entrances, so there's a lot of places you can get into it. So they would sell food. They would have vendors just like today's modern games. Sometimes they would have 100 days of games. As a matter of fact, the first games that took place were in 80 AD. The Emperor Titian who was Vespasian's son. They ran for 100 days straight, and these were brutal affairs, you guys. It was, if you see the movie Gladiator, that's not far from the truth. They would kill gladiators, animals. However, they would not throw Christians to the lions. That is a myth. That never happened. There may have been Christians who died in the Coliseum fighting, where there were lots of lions who were killed, but they never were thrown to the lions. That is just a myth. The Coliseum had its first retractable roof, so it's like a dome. You can see the pictures there of the awnings. This was really neat. Depending on the weather and the time of day and the sun, those canopies were all made out of cloth and things of that nature, and they were able to be moved on a pulley system, and they were worked by soldiers who were in the Navy, because they were good with sails, so they employed them to use the pulleys on the stadium of the Coliseum to direct sunlight and keep shade on some of its spectators. It's actually, the technical name for that is called a Valerium, with a V. So as the games are going on, these awnings would change, which I think is pretty darn cool. The Coliseum also had the ability to flood itself. So it's built over some springs and some running water, which I think is really neat. And they dammed those, and the water would come up through the ground into the Coliseum, and they would have mock sea battles. So the spectator could see what one of their naval battles would look like. That's absolutely crazy. It's like flooding the KFC Yum Center to put some boats in there. So with a lot less technology than we have today. It's quite impressive, the way they did it. Again, it's quite a marvel. This is just a picture to kind of show you guys the scale of how big it was compared to the other buildings in Rome. If you ever have a chance to get over there and see it, I highly recommend it. It was quite the spectacle for its time. Just a few kind of fun facts. It had 36 trapdoors for special effects. At one time, there was 10,000 animals a day killed, which I know that's very sad. However, that just kind of tells you the scope of what they were dealing with. Roughly 2/3 of the Coliseum has been destroyed due to vandalism, earthquakes, fires, things of that nature. But it still attracts thousands of people every year to it. And again, like I said, if you ever have the chance to go see it, go check it out, and you will also be in awe of how wondrously cool this building is. It's just one example of the engineering of the Romans. And so we're going to move next to the Roman aqueducts. These guys supplied water to the city of Rome and its outliers. As you see here in the picture, this is part of an above-ground aqueduct. The Romans used arches as a stronger and more efficient way of building. Less materials, but stronger. As you can see, it's crossing over a gap or a river here. Typically, however, the aqueducts were underground, so they would get water from a cistern or a natural lake or something, and they would dig an aqueduct slightly downhill to use gravity as its feeder. And when it got to an area that was like a valley, or like this here, for instance, a bridge, or a river, they would build these bridges to keep the water flowing. Here's another example of that right here. The first aqueduct that was built for Rome was in 312 BCE, and they call that the Aqua Appia. It ran around the Appian Way, which is a big thoroughfare in ancient Rome. For the time, it was quite the thing. You got to know that the Romans, they had plumbing. I know it's hard to believe, but they did. They had private baths, they had restrooms, they developed a sewer system, and this water system that they built would feed all of that. If you were a private citizen and you had a lot of money, you could have your own aqueduct, feed your own palace and your pools and your baths. They used, like I said, they used gravity in a cistern to feed it. This is one of the Roman baths that the water fed, and the water typically was pretty clean. It varied in quality depending on the aqueduct. There were 11 total aqueducts built for the Roman Empire, and they would bring water away from very long distances. So it was a gradual decline in the topography, and they just made sure to get it to where they needed to go, which that's incredible. Now, they weren't the first civilization to use it, but they did perfect it. Some of these would stretch over 62 miles. Can you imagine 62 miles of drainage to get water to where you needed to? But for a city of 1 million people, such as Rome, you're going to need a lot of water to feed that. And it fed its fountains and it fed its baths, like I said. And they used pipes to divert the water to where it needed to go. This is the Trevi Fountain, one of the many fountains in Rome, and you can see here the water. This also supplied by the aqueducts. I know it sounds nostalgic, but it's quite fascinating. If you've ever had a chance to see them in person, it's just awe-inspiring. They are still in use today. As a matter of fact, there's some fountains in Rome where you can drink from, and the water is pristine, and that's just a testament to the way their technology and their building ability. They would use this for farming. They would use it for private use. Again, as we said, use it for anything water related. This is a picture of one of the pipes that would divert the water to wherever it needed to go. This is a lead pipe. However, the Romans did know lead was dangerous and poisonous. However, sometimes they did have to use lead pipes to divert the water. But again, you're talking 2,000 years ago or more, they were making sure that their citizens had water, and that's one of the ways their empire grew so big. They knew how to take care of their citizens, and they knew how to build. Next on the agenda are the Roman roads, another feat of engineering. As you've heard the term "all roads lead to Rome," that's pretty true, especially back during the Empire days. These roads were built mostly by the soldiers. They had, there were specifics that they had to meet. They allowed for transport of trade. You gotta remember, Rome had cities and ports everywhere throughout the Mediterranean, so trade was very vital to their survival. Getting supplies and getting soldiers to and from places quickly was an extreme advantage. And these roads were the primary way they got to where they needed to go. Excuse me. So at the peak of the Roman roads, you can see here, this is like a Roman atlas. All the red lines you guys see there, those are roads. And that's really, really cool. Considering, again, how long ago it was. They had the foresight and the knowledge to do these. And you can see how quickly they could get to places where they needed to go. Within days, sometimes if they pushed their troops hard enough, they could get to places pretty quickly. Again, a very strategic advantage. There were no fewer than 29 great military highways, and they all came outside of Rome. They all started from Rome and went out. They had 372 interconnected great roads, and that roughly estimates about 250,000 miles of roads, which over 50,000 of that were stone paved. In Gaul, which is France, there's about 13,000 miles of roadways have been improved since then, and then in Britain alone, about 2,500 miles of those roads were used. So a lot of those roads that were built then were just used now and just built over. So again, the Romans really knew what they were doing when it came to building roads. This is a picture of kind of how they built them. You see how they layered it. They had mortar, which was the mixture of sand and lime. They got their stones. They had their pebbles. They had the sand. They had their roadway. They had drainage gaps in some places. They had mileposts, kind of telling you where you were going. Again, this is quite advanced for the time period. They had surveyors, just like they do today. Straight roads had to be at least 8 feet wide, and curves had to be wider to get things by. Chariots and horses and people and things of that nature all had to be able to traverse these roads. They were quite something. To end it, I'm going to show you here a picture of a 2,000-year-old Roman road compared to a 2-year-old modern road. Those of you who live here in Kentuckiana, you know very well that our roads are full of potholes. And there you go. So I'd rather traverse the 2,000-year-old Roman road than the 2-year-old modern road. So again, between the Coliseum and the Aqueducts and the Roman roads, Rome was also very advanced with regard to a lot of other things such as medicine and like I said, plumbing and sewage and politics and government and all those things. There's a lot of things we can attribute to today from the Romans. So if you're interested, Google some stuff. Look for some books on the Romans. They're fascinating civilization. Thank you for tuning in today. If you would like to see more of the wonders of Rome and the empire, please make sure you comment or look on our Facebook page for other content, or put a post on there, please. Thank you again for watching. Make sure you please subscribe and like our stuff. Pop over to Facebook, pop over to Twitter, check us out at Ignite History. We are here doing this because we want to, and we're having fun doing it. So I hope you guys are enjoying it, and we will see you guys on the flip side. Make sure you tell your friends about us.